Welcome to the GSD with Jeni Podcast, where we talk about how to overcome all the stuff that gets in the way of getting shit done. Imposter syndrome, fear, money, relationships, networking, building businesses. We're going to talk to experts, or as I say, mavens, that provide practical and tactical advice on how to GSD. I'm your host, Jeni Buchholz, founder and CEO of Haven Creative. I started my business with $300 in a laptop and grew it to a team of Haven mavens, serving clients around the world and generating over 7 figures in revenue. I'm incredibly proud of the success we've had, but I still need help too. So I started this podcast with the intent to dive deeper into the things that hold us back from achieving our goals. So thank you for joining me on this journey to GSD. Let's get started. Today's guest is someone who has literally built his career on creating customer experiences that become your competitive advantage. John DiJulius is the authority in creating world-class customer and employee experiences. He's a best-selling author of 6 books and has worked with such iconic brands as the Ritz-Carlton, Lexus, Marriott, Chick-fil-A, Starbucks, and more. When John works with brands, he helps them create experiences so strong that customers don't even think about price. They just want to come back. But what I love about John is he doesn't just talk about this stuff and teach it. He lives it. He's the founder of John Robert Spas, one of the top 20 salons in America. He runs a nonprofit called Believe in Dreams, and he is the host of the Customer Service Revolution podcast. Bottom line, if you want to create customer experience in your organization that will become your competitive advantage, you want to check out this episode. Let's get started. John, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You are the CX customer experience guru, as you have the sign behind your head, I noticed. So,
Oh, that's my license plate. I'm like, why are you saying that? Yeah, it's one of my license plates. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to dig into that in a moment, but I always like to start with your entrepreneurial story. Like, how did it all start? Let's start at the beginning.
All by crazy accidents. Nothing planned. Would love to tell you it was all. Met my wife in 1989, long before you were born, and she was this great hairdresser, and so
Born before 89, just so you know.
and then so I was driving a truck for UPS, and I wanted to open my own business. I thought it would be a sporting goods store. Like, it was the only thing I like sports, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So opened a salon for my wife, thinking that if it took off, I could quit this good paying job, UPS, and start my own thing. And then we actually struggled, or if you want, she struggled. I was more or less in the beginning just doing the books. And so I jumped in to help her more. And then between her artistic ability and my business and obsession with customer service, it just started taking off and growing and growing and growing. And then in the, early mid 90s, people in Cleveland started asking me to speak, chambers of commerce and stuff. And I didn't want to be a speaker. I didn't even know speaking was a thing. And so I only did it because I thought it'd be good marketing, that if, you'd hear about John Roberts, you'd become a customer. And then every time I spoke, 2 or 3 business owners would come up to me after and say, "Can we hire you and bring you into our business?" And I was like, had no idea that was a thing. So started speaking more and more, and then it, grew to more of a national level. And then my first book, Secret Service, came out in 2003. And literally, I went from a salon owner that spoke a little to a speaker that owned salons. And
amazing.
Yeah, haven't been involved in the salon. I still own them, but I'm not involved in them day to day. And then the speaking turned into consulting, and then that just blew up.
That I want to hear more about that story too. But jumping backwards, it sounded like you were already obsessed with customer experience in some way. What prompted that?
We had 3 no's when we opened: no money, no customers, no employees. And if you threw a rock in any direction on, like any city, you'd hit, 5 salons in any area. So we couldn't outspend, outbuild, out advertise, all those. And so this was in 1993. They were really bad at customer service. I think everyone was kind of bad, but especially salons. So, like, we still have our business plan. It's framed, and you'd be, really
But
impressed.
not a
It
100-page business plan? How did you frame it?
three cocktail napkins. Honest to God, me and my wife would go out, and she'd come home and complain about the salon she was working at, and she'd say, my, literally, this was her name, her best friend Jennifer, at the salon quit. I'm like, why? Jennifer loves to do hair, and she goes, because she has to go get a real job, one that has benefits, one that, has hospitalization, one that has vacations, one that trades. And so I'm like, oh, we should open a salon. And then, another thing was, like, she'd tell me about a customer would come in that didn't like her haircut or her hair color, and her owner would throw him out. And it was just like the customer service, the employee experience was just a debacle. So we would just, we'd be out drinking, because that's what we were doing when we were, at that age. And we're like, all right, if we ever open a salon, let's take care of customers really, really well. And let's take care of our employees really, really well. Not, the most sophisticated, but that was, I don't know if it was a necessity, but so we wanted to be the best experience you had. And there's something real important about that. I still think companies make a mistake today. We didn't want to be the best salon experience you had, because let's say you came into John Roberts today to get your hair cut. You then don't go across the street or down the street to our nearest competitor to compare, right? If you got your hair cut, colored, whatever, you're probably good for a salon for a few weeks, whatever, depending on your cadence. But where are you going from the salon? You're going to the dry cleaner. You're meeting your girlfriend for lunch. You have a doctor's appointment. That's what you're then comparing. And you walk into your doctor's appointment, and the receptionist won't look up, or, are rude, or whatever. And we wanted you to have, like, God, I wish they treated me like John Roberts did. So that was our, we just wanted to be the best experience in your day, even back then. And that became our obsession.
And that's what's so fascinating, because you were able to scale that obsession, if you will, to multiple locations, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
How?
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you instill, when you're not there as an owner,
Right.
how did you instill that and figure that out?
So great question. So our customer service, when our first, couple years, was really, really good, mostly because 50% of our employees were me and my wife. Right. And so if you worked with us, if you were one of the other two, you had to, because we're standing next to you. Right.
Yeah.
Then our customer service went backwards, because we started expanding, opening new locations, and we weren't everywhere. And I was like, wow, like, this is, a lot tougher. So that's when I started reading every book, trying to, see every speaker. We didn't have the internet back then. And I started going to, I studied at the Disney Institute.
Yep.
And
Yep.
yeah, and, anything I can get my hands on. And actually, the reason why I wrote a book was because I was so frustrated at books and speakers back then at customer service, because what they would do is, they would tell you the great story of, if you went to Nordstrom's and they didn't have your shoes in your size, without you knowing, they'd run over to Dillard's or Macy's, buy them there, come and sell them to you. That's a great story. But what the story, like, how did you get that associate to do that? Was
Exactly
it
what I'm
just,
asking. Yeah.
yes, was it just because I got Jeni, but if I came in tomorrow and I got Tim,
Right.
or if Jenny's boss, GM, wasn't there, would she have done that? Like that. And so that was, it was kind of out of that I had to figure out on my own. And that's really where the book came in, because I don't want to hear the warm and fuzzy story. I mean, those are nice, but they aren't telling me how you got everyone to automatically think, if we don't have it, we'll find it. And so then, like, one of my favorite stories that we have is, we had a client come in for a manicure one time, and on her way in, let's say her appointment was at 1, on her way in, her nail technician left sick.
Mm.
So, we didn't get a hold of her in time. So she walks in and, the receptionist checks her in, or no, when she checks her in, says, "I'm so sorry. Sandy just left home, just left, and she was sick." And she's like, "All right, well, who can take care of me?" And the receptionist says, "We're booked solid. I'm sorry. If you come in tomorrow or Monday, it'll be free. It'll be on us." And the client says, "No." She goes, "I have an interview in an hour. My nails look like shit. She goes, I don't care if you do them," pointing to the thing. So the receptionist runs around, and I'm telling the story the way it was told to me from the client, right? And the client admits, I was a bitch. I was, receptionist comes back up, says, "I'm sorry, everyone's booked solid, but I just booked you and paid for your manicure at the salon 4 doors down from us."
Whoa.
And I was like, "Oh my God, like that was the greatest story ever." Now, some people hear that story, they don't like it. They're like, "I don't want to be," I'm like, "I want that." Like, and I've always had this thing. You'll never get in trouble for something you do. You'll get in trouble for something you don't do. Meaning if you had said, "So sorry, there's nothing we can do," but like that, I celebrated her and I wanted everyone to look for that opportunity.
Going back to, though, how did you instill that behavior in them? I mean, you gave them obviously the autonomy to make decisions at a certain level, like
Yeah.
maybe core values, but can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, so obviously it starts at the person, the type of person we're hiring.
Hmm.
So "Hey, Jeni, how did you hear of us? What do you know about us?" And if you don't know anything about us, you're just going down looking for a job,
Hmm.
right? But if you say, "Well, I've been a client, my sister's a client," or, and I hear, your reputation, and that, like, I didn't think there was businesses that allow employees, you're hired. Like, that it's kind of like Chick-fil-A. Like, I always say this: if your next door neighbor or niece is always in her phone, let's say she's 19, she's always in her phone, and the only way you can communicate with her is text her, right? She doesn't make eye contact. She's not the friendliest. And you heard she was looking for a job. Probably wouldn't say, "Hey, I heard Chick-fil-A's hired." You automatically know that's not a right fit.
Hmm.
On the flip side, if she's adorable and she's, everything, you like you are, you'd be like, you'd be perfect at Chick-fil-A. So you're when you have a good reputation for customer service, it kind of does the screening for you, because certain people are like, "I don't want to work at that salon. That's a cult. They expect you to, walk
Be
people
nice.
out with an umbrella." Yeah, yeah, yeah. So it starts with the hiring, and then enormous, onboarding, and then what we call it is everboarding, which is after you've been trained, we will, every week at 4 o'clock on a Wednesday, you'll get like a video, and think TikTok, YouTube. It'll be a 90-second video of something you've already learned back in orientation that we expect you're going to remember for the rest of your life. And it's like, "Hey guys, don't forget about the 5 E's. The 5 E's are eye contact, enthusiastic, greet, ear to ear, smile, engage, and educate." And then, we'll go into a little bit, and it'll remind you. The next week it'll be, "Hey, don't forget the best way to build a relationship with someone else, personally or professionally, is to learn their Ford: family, occupation, recreation, and dreams." So when you focus on learning 2 or more things of someone's Ford, it does 2 things. One, it keeps the conversation off you. And 2, you're learning nuggets about Jeni, that she grew up in Maryland. She's kind of been a gypsy. She's lived all over, her husband does it, but now you can, you can stay on that. And then the next time Jeni comes in, you can follow up with, how's her job at Progressive Insurance, or, the big, interview she was in. So that's what we call everboarding, is just top of mind awareness, just constantly be hitting you every week with something that you learned, but you might have forgotten, that just
Yeah.
keeps it top of
I
mind.
mean, you hear the saying, you have to tell people 7 times, and I believe in this over-caffeinated, overstimulated, over data-filled world. You have to tell them more than that and in
Yeah.
smaller sound bites. So I love that. I haven't actually heard of everboarding and all the
I
EOS.
haven't either. I just read it in Vern Harnish's,
Oh,
like,
okay, okay. Thank
yeah,
you, Vern.
we do it, but we never called it everboarding.
Yeah,
We call it microlearning and just
okay.
sending it out. But
That makes so
yeah,
much sense, though. Yeah, you
it
have to be
does.
repetitive, just like training at a gym, right? You don't just go to the game, you gotta train.
Right.
Funny.
I
So
say annual customer service training's like deodorant. Within time, it'll wear off and the odor will come back. If that's all you do, right? If you think, all right, let's bring in a speaker, and if that's all you're going to do, I always say, don't waste the time. Have a better Christmas party,
yeah.
because it's going to wear off.
That's funny because I also get really tired of people talking about doing stuff, but then they don't actually GSD, right? They'll be like, ideas are great. They have all these ideas, but then they don't actually execute. Just like going to a trade show or conference, you get all these great ideas and you go home and you don't do anything with it. So yeah, you gotta
Yeah.
execute. I want to hear more about this four thing because I think you said it so fast and I
Ford. I'm sorry.
Ford.
Ford, like the car.
Right. So
Ford.
go through that
Yeah.
again. So it's an acronym that
Yeah.
stands, yeah.
So I did a TED talk called "Meet His Strangers, Leave His Friends," and that's really the basis around, we're all like, let's say, uh, me and you have lunch, right? Or we're at an event and I sit next to you and we speak for 30 minutes. Well, that doesn't mean I built a relationship or a rapport with you, because I could have been speaking about myself for 30 minutes. Oh my God, you wouldn't believe my flight to get here. And I think my number one salesperson, is looking for a new job. And my youngest son, Bo, got in trouble again. And we're all genetically coded to be preoccupied with what's going on in our life. It's not an insult. It's like, what's going on in your life is most important to you. What's going on in my life is most important to me. But I'm not going to build a rapport with you if I'm just talking about myself. So whether it's a 3-minute conversation or a 40-minute conversation, if you focus on learning the other two or more of the other person's Ford, you not only built a relationship, you now own the relationship, because your Ford is what you geek out about, right? My Ford is what I geek out about. I get excited. I start talking really fast. So family, is she married? Does she have kids? How old? What grades? What activities? Also in Ford and family, we throw in pets, because, a lot of people are psycho about their dog. If I hear a dog barking, I'm like, what kind of dog is that? And, what's the dog's name? And then the next time we talk, I'm like, how's Scruffy? Um, Occupation, right? What does she do? What's the name of her company? What's her title? How long she be doing it? Recreation is a lot of people's hottest buttons, because what we choose to do with our evenings, weekends, vacations, pickleball, running a marathon, yoga, whatever it is, that's what we like to do. And then dreams. D is dreams. What's on her bucket list? What's her dream? Yeah. And so, and it doesn't have to be like a stalker checklist, like, hey, Jeni, are you married? Do you have a kid? Like, it comes up organically,
Do
right?
that. Be
Yeah,
authentic.
right, right. But even like if you call our call center to make an appointment, right, for a manicure, I don't want them to forge you, right? That's not appropriate. But there's a couple things. One, we have, stuff that we might have found out, from, last time you're in. Oh, you're still working at Progressive, or did anybody notice the highlights you got in February? Or if they're paying attention, they might say to you, all right, Jeni, we have a manicure available on Friday at 4. But you might say, oh, no, my daughter's soccer team made it to regionals. Clients share Ford with us, but if we're too task focused on booking the appointment, we're like not hearing it, right? Catch that, write it down, and then when she checks in on Monday for a manicure, say, somebody at the salon says, how'd your daughter do? And you're like, at what?
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, so are you keeping this in a CRM, I guess? And
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, just all.
I even have it on a pad, and then we enter it later, and then we run reports. So we can run a report, and my clients do this when they initially roll out Ford. they'll run a report, to get everyone in a habit. So we'll say, all right, Jeni, whatever Jeni is, a consultant, accountant, here, whatever she is, if she has appointments, we can say, all right, Jeni had, 20 appointments last week. All right. From her book. And then we could run a report on, of those 20, how many of the Ford fields did she update? And maybe it was 2 out of 20, or maybe it was 19 out of 20. So, a lot of our clients will have a contest for the month, and you'll get, the winner gets, the new iPad, but it just gets you in a habit. And then you see the benefit, because when you say, hey, John, how's your 3 boys? I'm like, oh, I'm so happy. And then you see, the reaction, and it's not just, all right, John, what did you get done what shit did you get done last week? What do you have to get done? Well, that's important. I say there's a gift in every conversation if you're paying attention. So now I know you're going to Cleveland next week for a client. And if I know you're a runner or a hiker or that, I could send you the 3 best, hiking trails while you're there. And you don't even remember telling me that you're going to Cleveland, but you're paying attention for that conversation gift, besides the professional follow-up that we have to do.
Right. And I think, but that's what makes everyone feel special and heard and seen and valued in a world where everything is just moving so fast and you're just another cog in the wheel, I think.
Right.
And it comes
Right.
into the conversation about AI that I was mentioning earlier. With AI, I've seen so many. In fact, I had a card here that I got for Christmas that said, "Dear customer," literally customer, didn't put my name in it. Thank you
Yeah.
for the referrals this year. So it's just completely, just people are just moving so fast. They're not even back checking. And we're now in this world of losing that personal experience and touch. What are your thoughts on how AI is shifting the customer experience, or how we can continue to have experiences with AI?
Yeah, I actually think it's a golden opportunity to weaponize that, because everything is, we have less human interaction today, which means when we have it, it better be great.
Mhm.
And we got to train the employees on empathy and curiosity and better listening skills, and making a brilliant comeback when we do drop the ball. We're all going to be guilty of that. I love AI. AI can collect data, and some of our clients, they have AI collecting Ford for them, and tell them at the end of the conversation, all right, she mentioned this, and populating it. I want to be careful with that, because I don't want the employee to not listen for it because they know AI is doing it. But where AI is great is it takes the tasks that, the employee doesn't want to be doing. Like, you don't have to, like, I'm sure between us, we didn't literally get on a phone call to schedule this, right?
Yeah.
Either our assistants probably didn't even talk either. There was someone sent a Calendly invite and said, this is when it's about, boom, booked it. That's great for
Yeah.
AI. But
Efficiency. Yeah.
right, exactly. But then when there needs to be the expertise, or, someone that's able to do it, you better be on point with it. It's so important. So too many companies are using it. And just like you, I get these like LinkedIn messages that say, hello, John R., which I know they did, and they're
Yeah.
like, and I don't know if you've got this, but I've got, have you ever thought of writing a book? Like, come
Obviously didn't
on.
even read that I've written a ton of books. Yeah.
Right,
How many have you
right.
written now? How many is it?
Six,
Yeah, okay,
six.
come on, dude. Do a little bit of
Yeah.
research. Yeah. But
Can I
now
give
that
you a confession about my books?
yeah, go ahead.
So one of the things I teach, or we teach, is don't share your accolades. Like, and so my confession is, I was at a restaurant. I'm sitting at the bar, and I was with my significant other, and I sit at the bar. I don't know if you're like this. I like to eat at a bar because you get better service, right? The bartender's right there versus, hey, have you seen the waiter or waitress? Blah, blah, blah. So I like that. But I also like the community of a bar, because you meet people, right? And so it's like, you meet great people. So we're having this great conversation with this other couple at the bar. And at the end, we get up and we're leaving. And say, hey, it was such a pleasure meeting you. And the guy says, oh, pleasure. My name's Rick Jones. I'm like John DiJulius. And he's like, John DiJulius? I said, yeah. He goes, did you write a book? Now, all I had to do, Jeni, was say yes, right?
Yeah.
I didn't do that.
You said,
Guess
I wrote
what
a
I
script?
did?
No.
Yes.
What's wrong
And
with that?
oh my God. And as I said it, I
You're like, that
corrected
was
him.
juicy. Yeah.
My significant other looked at me like, you are such an ass. And
Yeah. We didn't mean it. It comes off the tongue. I get it.
right.
Like, yeah.
But it's
Yeah.
like, I haven't ran any marathons, but it's like if you meet someone and they're so excited to tell you they ran their first marathon and you've have competed in 10. You don't need to know that, right? And if they ask you, have you ever? Yeah, I have. But without trying to, consciously one up them, you're trying to make a connection that we have something in common, but she didn't need to know that you have, ran in 10. Because now all of a sudden she's not going to want to tell you about how tough it was because So it's like, shut your mouth and let that other person bask in the moment.
Yeah, I have a hard problem with shutting my mouth sometimes. I get so excited asking so many questions. But like you, I'll put
That's great.
my boy.
There's a term called it. I'm sorry. There's a term called insatiable curiosity, and the kind of the definition for it is if you ask a question and don't ask 2 to 3 follow-up, odds are you weren't. You were just asking the question. Like, hey, Jeni, how was your week? Yeah, Jeni, how was your weekend? Really? You want to know what I did? But I'm just asking because I want to tell you what I did.
So many people do that. Some narcissism. Yes.
Right.
But no,
right.
my boys always make fun of me because they're like, Mom, you talk to everyone. I'm like,
I
everyone
love
has
that.
a story and I'm fascinated by it. And in
So
fact,
fascinating.
I wrote an article about a woman I met on an airplane going to Iowa a couple weeks ago. And I was going to pop my headphones in and just kind of do my thing. But something made me pause and she had this smile to her. And I was like, I want to know more about her story. We ended up having a life-changing conversation of our losses and our marriages and where we lived
so
and how we grew up
cool.
just on an hour-and-a-half flight. And this woman now is in my contacts and wished me a happy trip to Italy with my boys. And we're sharing photos. Still, this is a woman I met on an airplane.
No, but everyone has an amazing story and, where they came from, what they've overcome. And that's what I love about that.
Yeah. And so, but to like what we were talking about earlier, getting my team to care the same way I care about clients and instilling those behaviors. And I think we do a pretty good job of it. We talk about making mavens and educating to empower. I'm like, oh, that's not making mavens. That's not helping someone out. But I love the idea of that continuous training of them and looking for the forward. You did some training with Chick-fil-A too, right?
Yeah.
That's the one I always use as an example because I can say
everyone does.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Tell me, tell me a little bit about how you got into these major brands and how you helped them. I know you're not going to brag about your accolades, but I'd like to know.
You kidding me? I'm going to correct you if you don't get it right. 6 books. Yeah, right. It was. I know. It's just luck. I spoke at a big event one time, and I'm telling you, it was in like 2004, and I'm still I get it's kind of the 7 degrees. I could trace every client back to that one event, and like Starbucks was in it in the audience, Chick-fil-A was in the audience. It was just being at the right place at the right time, and they had I don't know if you're old enough to know who Tom Peters is. Tom Peters was in the 80s and 90s Jim Collins of he was such a thought leader. So they had this huge lineup. Everyone was there to see them. I was this unknown, which was fine, but I was able to take advantage of. So then people started hiring me, which was scary because, I was learning more from them than I was teaching them. But they liked they wanted to still act small. And so they liked my salon example. So we have this example, if you walk into our salon, you're going to see 10 people I'm making this up. You're going to see 10 people getting a haircut, let's say. Okay. you're going to see 7 or 8 in a black John Roberts haircutting cape and, 2 or 3 in a white John Roberts haircutting cape. So to you, the customer, we have black and white capes. Any of our team members, black, they've been here before, white, they've brand new.
Ah,
So, and so like if I'm another employee, if I'm a massage therapist and, and I'm just walking through and if I see you in black, I say, hey, welcome back. Great to see you again. If I see you in white, I might stop and say, hi, I'm Joe. I'm a massage therapist. Here's a welcome to John Roberts. I don't know if you know that we do massages. Here's a gift certificate for, 20% off your first, and people can't believe. And then we have gold capes, and that means they're a VIP, right? So it's these silent cues and visual triggers that you don't have to have worked here 7 years, 7 months, or 7 days to understand. White capes don't get treated better. They get treated differently. They get more education. They get more, direction on what we're doing here. So they just love, those little, like, small business things that they don't want to get away from.
it's also fun for the client, right? I want a gold cape.
Yeah, but the clients don't realize. They don't know that,
They're not wondering like, why do I got upgraded from a black to a gold? What, they don't notice that?
they just think we have black and white capes and gold capes. Yeah. But we were able to replicate that in like, all businesses, whether it's, over the phone, it might be your CRM system that says, this, whatever. So that was what Secret Service was, that, that you don't know how we're doing it, but it may be my first day and I know you're a VIP, or I know you work at Progressive Insurance, or, whatever, you have boys, or you just got back from Italy, is those little things.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So how this, we've been talking a lot about the consumer world, a lot of B2C, right? A lot of our clients are B2B. How can people improve customer experience in that kind of a world where it's
And 80% of ours is B2B. And so, yeah, it's actually easier, because think about this. If you work at Chick-fil-A, Starbucks, Hallmark, whatever, a brick and mortar, and I walk in, no one's coming there with an appointment. So you can't cheat. You can't pull me up and say, oh, it's John, right? And he's from, right? But in a B2B world, we can't. I have a call with Jeni today. Who's Jeni? Oh, that's right. Jeni is, and she's the owner of, and she, lives in South Carolina, and she has boys, and she's just got back from Italy, and her purchase history. Like, we can cheat, because it's all in front of us. So, that's where the Ford comes in. That's if it's a new client, like, like you, I'll look at my day if I'm in Cleveland and I'm not traveling, and I got, 6 Zoom calls. All right, 4 of them might be with an existing client, and I'll still go and say, all right, refresh my memory. 1 might be someone that's a potential client who I don't know. Well, now I'm going to go to LinkedIn and look for 2 things on LinkedIn. Who's our mutual connections, right? Because that's going to build a bond. Because if we both know so-and-so, that gives me credibility, right? And then the other thing is, where are you alumni of? Because, everyone's proud they're alumni. So that's how I'm going to, open up with, and so it's not a transaction. Because, if you're calling, to use my services, or I'm calling to use your services, you might have 3 other businesses that you're comparing them to. So it's kind of like, I want to pale in comparison, and they are just, all right, tell me what you're looking for. What's your objective? All right, we can do that for, this, we got to blow that away.
Within an organization, I think it's really critical to train teams to understand that it's not just a sales function. This is not just a marketing function. To me, this is a full lifestyle cycle of your customer function. So operations and procurement and service, how we're speaking to our customer matters. Would you agree?
100%. And we also have to know who, a lot of people who don't technically interact with the external customer, but support the ones that do, don't think they have a customer.
Yeah.
And so we got to teach them, what it's like to be an account executive or, the lawyer or the consultant, and what that's your customer, right? You're supporting them. And by not getting the information back, by not, getting it, this is, how it's affecting them, or they're going to lose the sale, or they're going to, my competition's getting, the proposal back to you by the end of the day. But because, someone who is doing it, ran out of time and said, I'll just get it tomorrow. Well, you have to understand what the domino effect that is going to have on how well you do your job.
So tell me, what is it like for you traveling? Do you notice right away when you go somewhere that they have crappy customer experience?
Yeah. And everyone, like,
That gets hard.
we have a customer experience executive academy that people go through for like a year. And I always tell them that it's going to be a curse. You'll never look at an experience again. And, so you'll be sitting there and you might say, hey, instead of, the mashed potatoes or whatever, the toast at a breakfast place, can I just have a side of fruit? And they'll say, well, that's going to cost you more. Okay, I wasn't asking for it for
Right.
free, you know?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
the best way to say, you want them to say is, we absolutely can do that. That will be an extra $1.50, or whatever it is. But instead of, saying no, or, acting like, so yeah, it's a curse, but it's kind of a good curse. So what I always advise people is, when you have a hideous customer experience example that happens to yourself, okay, the besides that experience, the first thing I think of is, are we guilty of that?
Yep. Yep.
So I'll give you an example. There was a sign on a bathroom at a restaurant that said, only for customers, or literally a $5 charge to use our restroom if you're not a paying customer. Okay. And you're like, what? So the first thing you think is, that's absurd, how horrible. But then I started thinking, are we guilty of it? And we were. Different scenario, and not maybe as egregious, but I was I was in my office in town, and I said, who's in the conference room? And they said, oh, the managers from the salons are having like a managers meeting. Again, I'm not involved in the salons anymore. We share the corporate out. So I figure I'll go and clean up my email, sit in the back and see what they're talking about. So around 9:15, someone brings up, and one of the salon managers says, hey, we send out this promotion, and it's, you're $5 off, and, one per customer. And I'm getting people that are coming in and trying to use it multiple times. And someone else says, yeah, I am too. And I am too. So for the next 45 minutes, 12 people talk about how they can catch them and stop it and all this. And so it's like, this is October. Okay. I just remember this. So I said, all right, guys, can I ask you a question? How many times has this happened to you? Jeni, how many times has this happened to you in your salon? And she says, oh, at least 3 times this year. I said, all right, Sandy, how many times has this happened to you? Oh, 2 or 3 times at least. I said, okay, we just spent 45 minutes of 12 people's time on something that may happen one more time this year. That's $5. Right? Who gives a shit? Now, could we have spent that 45 minutes on better sales, better customer experience, better product knowledge? So we're guilty of it in a different way of, oh, we're going to catch them. It's like, really? I like, let's utilize our time better. So sorry, I
Focusing
know
on the
I'm going
wrong
off in
problems that
tangents.
don't.
Yeah.
No, I agree. I think oftentimes we get stuck in inertia. We get stuck on our own problems and not looking around, and we can't move forward. We lose momentum in a
I like
business.
to say, don't punish 98% of your customers what you're afraid 2%
Or
are going to try
2%
to
will
get it.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And either way,
I'm
they're
fine with getting taken advantage of 2% of the time. I'm sure I'm not, but if I am, because what the other 98% are shocked that you could use it. Yeah, it
I agree.
expired
They say
on.
the same
Yeah,
thing. Yeah,
yeah,
with employees, right? They're like, don't punish most of your workforce because maybe 2 people don't appreciate the nice toilet paper in the bathroom
exactly,
or
exactly.
whatever.
Right, right.
What are maybe 3 things or one thing even businesses could do today to improve their customer experience? What would it be?
Yeah. The first one is you have to dictate what service aptitude is. Um, Service aptitude. Uh, the number one thing CEOs get wrong with customer experience is they think, service aptitude, customer experience is innate. It's common sense. And it's not. Um, I don't know about you, but I didn't grow up staying at five-star resorts.
Hell no.
Right. Getting a Mercedes Benz when I turned 16, flying first class. But the first 10 jobs I had, from high school on, I was expected to give that type of experience to those types of customers. And there's a disconnect, right? The fanciest restaurant I may have ever been at up until then, besides a Taco Bell, might have been an Applebee's,
Or
right?
Red Lobster. Red Lobster
Right,
was it.
right. And so it's not fair to think, that employee. So you have to, train the service aptitude and the forward and building an instant rapport and making a brilliant comeback and empathy. The second thing I would share is that world-class companies, customer service companies, remove personal interpretation. And what I mean by that is if I tell 100 employees to go out and deliver genuine hospitality, and that's all I say, I'm going to have 100 personal interpretations.
Uh,
One person might think a head nod is genuine hospitality. Someone else might think jumping in their arms and hugging them is. Okay, what's my business's definition of it's the 5 E's: eye contact, enthusiastic greet, ear to ear smile, engage, and educate. Eye contact takes less than 5 seconds, right? So that's just an example. And then the third enemy of a great customer experience is employee roulette. And that goes back to, if I get Jeni, John, I went to your salon or whatever. Which location? Chagrin Falls. Who'd you get? And then I hold my breath. Right. Please don't say, Shelly, because she's new or she's been fighting with her boyfriend and, whatever. That's employee roulette. Employee roulette is when the level of experience your client gets is dependent on which employee they encounter. We can't have that. Right. And that's the great thing about like a Chick-fil-A is you can go to any Chick-fil-A anywhere and you're going to get a even though it's a different 19-year-old, right? They're going to ensure that 19-year-old says my pleasure, beats the greet, all those things. So yeah, service aptitude, employee roulette, and remove personal interpretations.
Thank you for just giving us 3 tips to GSD. See, we didn't talk about getting shit done that much, but you just gave it to me.
I know. I want to learn more about getting shit done.
No, it's all good. Okay, I'm going to wrap up with some fun, fast facts. What's one of your favorite quotes or motto that you live by?
I have so many, but you don't want to be known as the best at what you do. You want to be known as the only one that does what you do.
Ooh.
So yeah, so like I eat, sleep, and drink customer experience. I turn down, presentations maybe on leadership or social media or AI or motivate. That's just not me. I want to eat, sleep, and drink. So when someone says John DiJulius, they automatically think of customer experience. They don't think, well, I know he does this, It kind of dilutes it. That, and then another quote I just heard recently is, do so much work, and I'm not doing it justice, but do so much work at your thing that it'd be unreasonable for you not to be successful. Like there's just no way you're not going to be successful. I mean, you eat, sleep, and drink this, and whether it's being a father, a significant other, whatever it is, doesn't have to be just on the professional side.
Love that. All right, favorite book. You can't name your 6.
No. I like autobiographies. Like to me, they're like watching uh, a binge watching something. Like even though I know how it ends because they become president or Nike, when you're
Right.
hearing the story, I'm like, they're going to go out of business. They're going to go. And
When you
I
watch the
know,
movie.
yeah. So it's Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. Oh my
Oh,
God.
yeah, I heard that's good. Okay. Yeah.
I listened to it and I swear I felt like I was sitting at a bar with him drinking beers and he was just telling me great
Oh,
stories.
that's cool. I love
Yeah.
books. That's why I ask. Okay, the
Yeah.
last thing is you go on a lot of stages. Sometimes people go before they go on stage, they want a hype song. I call this maybe a GSD song. Like one song ramps you up, or maybe you just play it in the car and you're like, it just makes you feel good. What would be your go-to tune?
Well, I mean, I just had this yesterday. I spoke somewhere and they said, "What do you want to walk out to?" And because of my brand, the customer service revolution and the employee experience revolution, I walk out to the Beatles Revolution. I like
Nice.
that. Yeah,
I'm gonna
yeah,
add that to the GSD playlist then too.
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you
yeah,
for that.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, John, I really do appreciate this conversation. It's fun to learn about, and I can't wait to connect with you in person soon to talk more.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to GSD with Jeni. If you found this episode helpful, share it with a friend. For more ways to GSD, you can also find me on LinkedIn at Jeni Buchholz, where you can sign up for my Maven Mindset newsletter, or follow me on Instagram at Maven Jeni. Until next time, go GSD, Mavens.